Hello and welcome to this video on the truth behind food labels. We'll go through this worksheet. You can check your answers as you go along watching this video and make any edits as required, or just know if you've got it all right. So how often do you read food labels? If yes, explain why you read food labels. This question is pretty subjective. There's no right or wrong. It's probably good if you end up starting to read food labels if you didn't previously, now that you know more about them, having completed this lesson. For me, personally, I'm going to put yes, I do read food labels, and I read them for a number of reasons, and that is to find out about the nutrient content in the food, as well as to check ingredients to see if there is anything in the food that I cannot eat as a vegetarian that doesn't eat eggs. So that's important for me to be able to see. That's subjective, there's no right or wrong, but it's good to be more aware of food labels, especially now that you've done this lesson. You then had this video clip to watch. Sadly, a Lamborghini does not appear at the end of the video, even though that was mentioned in there. And then what you had to do is essentially analyze some food labels that looked like this. This is all in the attached PDF. We can kind of scroll around. You can see various things: the chili link, the cashew cheddar, the grape juice, the blue bunny ice cream, pretty sure, and the pizza, which is the one that I'll work with just because it's in the top left corner and it's nice and easy to read for this video. So I used lasagna as an example here. I gave an example of how to complete this table. You needed to analyze the foods. It says here, analyze at least 4 of the food labels. Lasagna has been done for you, which is the example down below. So I'm going to do one over here. I said I'd use pizza for this video, so I'm just going to put pizza into there. And let me start to fill out some of the parts of this. It says carbohydrates per 100 grams. I did an example here, which is written. I'm going to do an example here through this video as well. So let's just go back to that label. Now that label says that there's 44 grams per serving. Okay, so serving size, 1/3 of a pizza is what this manufacturer thinks is one serving. A third of a pizza, and that's 157 grams of pizza. In that 157 grams of pizza, there's 44 grams, which are carbohydrates. So what I want to do, I want to know, according to this part in the table, how many carbohydrates there are per 100 grams, not just per 157 grams. So the way that I can do that, let me just pull up a calculator. That would be pretty handy. So you've got a calculator here, and what did we say? We said that there is 44 grams per 157. So what I want to do is 44, divide that by 157, and then times it by 100. Essentially what that gives us is the percentage of carbohydrate in this food, which is also the same as the number of grams per 100 grams, which here is 28.0254, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to write out that entire number, but I think 28 grams sounds pretty decent there. So I'm just going to put 28 grams. If I gave in 1 decimal point, which all of these seem to be to 1 decimal point, I'd give us 28.0. So actually, let's be consistent. Let's do that. So 28.0. We then got protein over here. Let's do the exact same thing. So we have a look at this. It says that 16 grams per, not 100, but per 157. Do the same calculation. So 16, going to divide by 157, and then multiply it by 100. And what do I get? I get 10.19, which to 1 decimal place rounds to 10.2 grams per 100 grams. And the last one here, it says fats. Let's take a look at the label once again. Total fat, 12 grams. 12 grams, again, out of 157. So 12 divided by 157 times that whole thing by 100 to get it per 100 grams, we get 7.6. It's 7.64, that means it rounds down to 7.6, seeing as we're doing all these to one decimal place. And then it says here calories per serving. Let's just take a look. Does it tell us how many calories per serving? Yes, it does. I can just write that information down. 350 straight into here. Let's read the ingredient list. Let's see if there's an ingredient that perhaps we wouldn't have heard of too much or be that familiar with. You might be. There'll be some in here that even I'm not that familiar with. For example, here we can see that there is, a little read through, there's ascorbic acid. Now, we don't generally go around when cooking. You might not have ascorbic acid at home. You might do, but it's unlikely. So I'm just going to put here ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid. And it says, where is it from? Well, this bit here is, again, a little bit subjective, not subjective, but it will vary in all of your answers because you might have picked out, for example, looking at this, you might have picked out microbial enzymes. You might have picked out calcium chloride, or perhaps these cheese cultures, or canola oil. I don't know, whatever it might be, something that's not so familiar. And then just a bit of research into those last two columns. So I won't go through all of those. This is really just to give you an idea of how to do the calculations. That was the key bit. And then just the general structure for these final columns. We have a look through the rest of the worksheet. There's a video here that you had a look at to bust food labels to find out more about the truth behind them. And a little bit about how food marketing works as well. Question 2 here, again, it's a little bit subjective. Do you think the traffic light food labelling system, that's this one up here, is good? Explain your answer. That's really up to you. In my personal opinion, I'm going to say yes, it is good. I'm going to explain it. Excuse me, I'm going to explain it and say why I think it's good. So I'm going to say yes, it is good because it allows you to compare different foods and their nutrient content at a glance. Essentially, just a quick view, you can tell, is it red, is it yellow, is it green? That might help you work out whether it's low in certain foods or certain nutrients such as fats and so on, or whether it's very high, and you can then make informed decisions about what food you might try and purchase or eat. We then have this activity about the calorie control article on FDA regulations. This is mostly objective, and this is the actual article itself. So we start off from the top here. It says Food and Drug Administration, FDA, the first one here. FDA, what does it stand for? We can put now Food and Drug Administration. It says if a food is described as light, what percentage is it reduced by? Well, it depends. It says here that for foods deriving more than 50% of their calories from fat, the light product must be at least 50% reduced. But if it's less than 50% of their calories from fat, then it has to be at least 1/3, or reduced in fat by at least 50%. So reduced in calories by at least 1/3, or reduced in fat by at least 50%. It kind of varies. I'm going to go with the majority part there and just say the fat content is reduced by 50% in most cases. Other than fats, which other substance could this describe? Well, there's an example given just below. It says here sodium content. Essentially, that's referring to salt content. So I can say here sodium content. It then says what is meant by a reference food, and to explain your answer. So you would have, of course, been reading through and read through this entire article, and you find this term here that says what the FDA calls a reference food. So they're reduced in given nutrients compared to what the FDA calls a reference food. Now, that reference food is a representative value for a broad base of foods, such as an average of the top 3 national or regional brands, or a result of of a given product. Now, that's we could try and paste that in. I'd rather not. I'd rather try and put that into my own words. And so what I could say here as a reference food is that it's a representative, or essentially reference food is foods of the top brands in the US, nationally or locally, against which the nutrient content of other foods can be compared, e.g. against the top 3 brands of chips. What is the difference between fat-free and low-fat? You can see some definitions here. It says fat-free is less than 0.5 grams of total fat for a given reference amount. But if we see something that is low-fat, that's 3 grams or less of total fat for a given reference amount. So fat-free is not really fat-free. It's less than 0.5 grams. It's very, very low, not completely free necessarily. So we can say here, fat-free refers to foods with less than 0.5 grams of total fat for a given reference amount. And let's do that again. Low fat refers to foods with less than 3 grams of total fat for a given reference amount. And so, yeah, again, just to say here and refer back to the idea of reference amounts. We did reference foods, but reference amounts, there's 139 different food product categories, and they essentially have an amount of food, essentially a serving size, that's usually consumed per meal, per eating occasion. That's what it's referring to, is really the idea of this typical reference serving size. So that companies can't necessarily just say their serving size is actually 5 grams when no one would, let's say, necessarily eat a meal with just 5 grams of a food. That's extremely low, and they can't just sort of box their numbers around. It has to be a typical amount that someone would consume, this reference amount in a meal. This last part here is extension. It says research the differences between a fruit juice and a fruit drink. Now you could go into lots of detail on this extension. For the purposes of this video, I'll just do a quick summary. Essentially, fruit juice refers to 100% 100% fruit content. This, whereas fruit, again, fruit drinks contain fruit juice, but only have to have approximately, or at least 5% fruit juice content. So fruit juices are essentially undiluted fruit juice, pure juices, whereas fruit drink are diluted and may have other ingredients added to them as well. That's not to say that fruit juice sometimes has additional sugars, generally shouldn't. Fruit juice refers to 100% fruit content, but fruit drinks certainly will have other ingredients in them and they'll be diluted down. It won't be 100% juice. So there is that video. I said go back and check your answers for this, make any edits as required, and if you have any questions, do get in touch, and I'll see you in the next one.